Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Nancy Flournoy. I'm delighted to be here with my cousin, Virginia Hildebrand, and have some interesting things to tell you about the Aeon Patch tonight. So I will share my slides. Let's see, first I have to find the share screen button. Okay, you see them, Virginia?
I see them, but I see the whole screen.
Oh yeah, I got to get the play from start screen. Thank you. Okay.
There you go. That's
We're
good.
ready to go. Thanks. Welcome again. Glad to have you here tonight. This talk is about a Lifewave. Lifewave's the company, a Lifewave phototherapy patch, which you can see a little picture of down here. It looks like a little band-aid you're going to put on your skin. Aeon is part, the Lifewave has three patches they call the YH patches. And the other two, which we've just talked about previously, are named after particular proteins that the Lifewave, that the phototherapy patch stimulates. So this one's different. It's got a name that is not named after the protein. So we're going to talk about that. On the right, this is the sleeve the patches come in. You know, there's like 31 for each day of the month, essentially. If you were going to take one every day, if you're going to use one every day. So this is a package that contains a month's supply. And the statements here are the statements that Lifewave has, passed the mustard with the FDA and all their lawyers to be able to put on their material. So the statements are, they're clinically proven to reduce stress in the body and promote relaxation. And we're going to talk much more technically about what that means. So this product was released in 2011, and a lot of their products are named, just numbered. And so if you are looking at the Lifewave website, and they have a section on science, and a lot of the publications are there about the research, and the patch is also known as X15. So anything that says X15 is talking about the Aeon patch. So let's talk about what Aeon means. It's actually a term that references, well, there's different definitions depending on where you look. So one place I looked said it's 1,000,000 years. But in astronomy, it's 1,000,000,000 years, or actually 10 to the 9th years is what I think that's supposed to be, and abbreviated in the astronomical literature as AE. Roger Penrose, mathematician, actually used the word to describe a period between successive and cyclic big bangs in the context of cosmology. So for most of us, it's just a term that's used to mean a big, long, indefinite period. So we'll see what that has to do with this patch. So these are, again, the claims from the company: anti-stress, pro-relaxation. And let's see if we can learn a little bit more precisely about what it does. First, all Lifewave patches are a patented proprietary form of phototherapy. They're passive, they are wireless. It's a nanotechnology that has nano antenna. That's in that little patch, are a bunch of antenna that are going to transmit wavelengths into your body, wavelengths of light. So no drugs, no chemicals, no stimulants. Now, here's the patch again. Each patch is designed to influence a particular photoreceptor in the body. So in the case of the Aeon patch, the founder, David Smith, in one of his talks, told us that those light waves are aiming to increase the Queen Bee Peptide. So I immediately had to find out what that was and what that had to do with people. And then he several times has added this little phrase at the bottom, in the liver. And it's only just here recently that I've been able to find a connection, any connection. I'm not quite sure it's the connection he intended, but a connection between this peptide and the liver. So towards the end of the talk, well, somewhere in the middle of the talk, I'll tell you what that connection may be. So this next little picture and bullet point tells you that these materials are they're the photons. They reflect specific frequencies of cells back into your body. They take the heat from your body. That's what powers the crystal in the cell to then reflect back the light waves. And the aim of all the patches is to increase, the aim of most of the patches is to increase specific products of metabolism. These are two of the early researchers that we will see their names occasionally here. So the Queen Bee Peptide in the scientific literature is actually called royal lactin. Royal lactin. So the royal, of course, is connected to the queen bee. And this is a picture of it. It's just this long curly chain of amino acids. And sort of one of the things we know on the surface is that the queen bee actually grows many more cells than the average bee, and the queen can regenerate where most other bees cannot. So this information has been known for a long, long time. So what's the royal lactin have to do with longevity? Well, this is like a little history lesson here. Well, it's three major papers. So on the first statement here, this is a paper in 2011. This Dr. Kamakura talking about this big long chain of amino acids declared in his paper that it was essential for determining who was going to be the queen among all the honeybees, because all the honeybees have the same DNA structure, and it's something other than the DNA that makes the queen the queen. So he professed that he had scientifically demonstrated that this substance, the royal lactin, was what was responsible for the queen being the queen and for her having her long life. So then along came this other author, Buttstead, and his colleagues in 2016, and they complain, and they, so here you're going to get these initials. This is MRJP1. Okay, that looks like a lot, but it's major royal jelly protein number 1. So we have the royal jelly protein, and the major means it's a big one or an important one. And then you see we have 1, 2, 3, and others. And this author complains that, or didn't complain, but he claimed that he could not reproduce Kamakura's work, that it was the number 1 protein itself that was responsible, and that you needed these other proteins in order to make the larva develop into the queen. And that was kind of consistent with a theory that the queen became the queen just because she got more food than anybody else, because everybody else came to feed her. And that was immediately then rebutted by Kamakura, who in the very, just almost immediately here, put out an argument that said that the Buttstead had done his science not carefully, the design was at fault, and that his results weren't true. So as far as I can tell, Kamakura has had the last word, and that the current theory, the current belief that has not been further disproved, is that this royal lactin, major royal jelly protein 1, is the substance that's responsible for the queen being the queen and having a long life. Now, this is just a little summary of bullet points from a review by Ramanathan and his colleagues in 2018. And so, as we were just saying, so this is 3 years later, he's agreeing with the scientific literature at this time, claims that, so this doesn't distinguish the one from the others, but that the major royal jelly proteins are responsible for the development, the caste differentiation, longevity, and reproduction in honeybees, and that components also influence gene expression. So that's consistent with making one the queen and nobody else. And then they also mentioned that these effects have been shown in other animal models, and I'll mention that again a little bit later. And then on a less longevity, well, related, but less connected specifically with longevity, the royal jellies are known to be very nutritious, and they've been eaten by humans forever. And they also have antibiotic peptides, bioactive compounds, and therefore, as far as our regulatory systems are concerned, if you're going to buy some royal jelly in your, at the store, it is considered a nutraceutical. So 2019, now this is the International Journal of Molecular Science. So this is a pretty basic science piece of research that declares that the queen bee jelly is a big player in anti-aging activity. And this list of things that it contributes to include lowering the blood pressure, lowering fats in the blood, stopping tumor growth in vitro. That's in somebody's determined it in a test tube or in a cell culture, not in a humans. It's anti-inflammatory, and it modulates the immune response. So we'll see some of these topics come up in a little later in a more basic science context. Now, it took me a long time to find any evidence for this royal jelly being in humans. And in fact, there is a mammalian or mammals analog of the jelly. And it's been declared that this analog could revolutionize stem cell science. So here's a little bit about this train of thought. This comes from a paper in 2018. And this Dr. Wan is from the Stanford University School of Medicine and a few other places. And his research led him to declare that he had shown that these royal jelly proteins promote division in stem cells. So that's pretty basic, which supports the proliferation that's seen in embryonic tissues, boosts complete regeneration in damaged or absent tissue. And the regeneration and division of stem cells are usually impeded with aging. So he may have been responsible for this name Regina. So Regina was declared to be the name in mammals as opposed to the royal lactin that is the name of the jelly proteins in the bees. But in the literature that I've read, this Regina name really didn't catch on. And so I see the royal lactin term being referenced also in other animals. And so at this time, 2018, it's established that it's going to restore the appearance and behavior of stem cells to restore their appearance. But this is a study in culture, not in humans. And that it appears to establish specific patterns of gene expression that are necessary for a cell to stay in the stem cell state. And of course, the stem cell state means that that cell can be made into any kind of cell you need. You know, it's not differentiated to a point that if it's in your, if it's a bone cell, it can't help your liver be a liver cell. So being able to have stem cells as we age is huge, and huge for longevity. Now, here's a little picture that then is a little more modern in terms of, here's your royal jelly at the top. And if you go to follow my cursor to the model organisms, you can see a collection of animals in which this mechanism has been found to work. And so we not only have the bees, but we have nematodes and I don't know, looks like a tapeworm, I'm not sure. Some other bugs and rats or mice is what I heard in what the literature I read said mice. That looks like a rat to me, but we'll say mice. And I also saw reference in the literature to what they called social insects. So that particular paper was talking about ants, which was like the bees in that there was like a queen ant that had this long longevity attributes that the queen bee does. So they're finding this more and more places, I guess, now that they're looking. So in humans, at least at the time of this paper, this was actually just, it was online. I'm not quite sure who did it. But in vivo, that's in human beings in the body, it's been established to increase fertility and decrease metabolic disorders. And in the test tube or the laboratory culture, it's been shown to increase the proliferation of cells, how fast they're going to divide, decrease the senescence, that's how fast they're going to die, will go down, and then increase the telomeres. And I thought that was very interesting. We won't talk about this today. We'll talk about telomeres in the context of other patches, but I've not found myself actually any literature that supports this, but I'm guessing it's there. So we'll, talk about that on another day. So now here's this question about what might the liver have to do with the royal jellies? And I still, one question in my mind, when David says something, I pay attention because he's usually thought about these things and had discussions with people that know a lot more than, where his knowledge is probably a lot more current than whatever I'm able to dredge out of the printed literature. What I found is that the royal jelly increases this long chemical name, this thing with the long chemical name. It doesn't matter what it is at the moment, but you see this little couple of histograms here. And on the y-axis, we have percent of control. So this is the change from the control with this substance. And on the right, you have the major royal jelly protein 1. So that's the queen bee protein. And then the next one over here is another protein, and it happens to be the protein that gives milk its white color. So it's also one involved with, babies that might have a lot of generation and regeneration ability when they're born. And you can see that the casein increases this substance. I assume it's a protein, I'm not sure, increases this substance 100%, but the royal jelly increases it more like 130%. So what do we know about this substance? So it's been found to ameliorate hepatic inflammation. So, like fatty livers. Liver, is our major detox, and it's our major detox. You really need it to work well if you're not going to be, when you're digesting your food, or you're going to have a lot of food that's only partially digested, thrown back into your blood system, and it'll be in a state that is where the chemicals are not well connected, and so they'll be in a highly charged and able to do a lot of damage to your body. So you want your liver to work well. And this substance, CyPEP-A1, has been found to help reduce hepatic inflammation. It also plays a in the same context, it plays a critical role in bile acid and cholesterol homeostasis. That is, keeping those at the level you want. You need bile to digest your food. You don't want too much, or you're going to feel sick, and if you've burped it up, it doesn't taste very good. The same with cholesterol. You got to have cholesterol to live. It's a very important substance for your body positively, and you don't want it out of control. You want it to be doing what it's supposed to be. And so as it controls the bile acid and the cholesterol, what are the effects of that? So you get reduced bile acid. If you have too little bile acid, it aggravates hepatic inflammation and fibrosis, and that's diet-induced hepatic inflammation. So and also the bile acids participate in the regulation of lipids, that's fats, glucose, and it participates in energy metabolism. So there's a connection between royal jelly and the important proper functioning of our bodies and our digestive system. And I will continue to keep my eyes open for other reasons why David Schmidt, founder of Lifewave, would insist on saying in the liver when he talks about the royal jellies. But for now, this is what I have, the connection I found. Now, we have another major way in which the bee pollen, the bee jelly can help. And that has to do with a thing called the glutamate GABA balance. And we'll talk a lot more about this when we talk about the Sleepy Nights patch. But for now, the genesis of this connection with the bees is the following. So think about your honeybee going out to the hive, getting pollen, and bringing it back to the nest. And the pollen they bring back is going to, as part of their diet, stimulates the production of collagen, and also contains nucleic acids, which are pieces of RNA and DNA. And these help prevent premature aging. So the bees go get this. All the pollen collects on the legs and bodies of the bees, and so they're running around with large amounts of this nucleic acid on them, and then the queen eats it off their legs. And it's specifically needed to optimize glutamine chemistry. And glutamine makes these two substances, glutamate and GABA. So the postulate was that these nucleic acids enhance the ability of these two compounds to switch. And I'll show you a picture of that on the next slide. But the switching in terms of chemistry and in terms of timing, but in terms of what kind of switching is important. Bees, when we stay up for, 2/3 of a day, and then we go to sleep for half of a day. So in the sense of going from, a quiet time to an up and functioning time, we only flip the switch twice a day, unless, you're old, you're not sleeping so much, wake up in the middle of the night. But as a rule, we don't switch kind of our major energy activity on and off very often. But bees, they go run a marathon. They go get their energy, they come back, they sleep for 15 minutes, and then they go again. So they switch this major on-off energy a lot. And the thesis is, from my friend, the biochemist, is that it's really healthy to be able to switch, to sleep when you want to sleep and wake when you want to sleep, and wake and be functioning. So here's this GABA and glutamate here, and you got some of both, and if they're balanced well, you've got the teeter-totter, everything's balanced, and this is a little schematic for what is optimal. Now, if you have too much glutamate, then you're going to be anxious and restless. You may have migraines, tics, and you may go flapping around. So this is a little schematic. And then just a little more, one way to think of the glutamate, which is goes with the anxiety and restlessness, is that if you're driving a car, the glutamate would be the gas, and the GABA is the brake. And you want the gas when you want the gas, you want a brake when you want the brake. You don't want to be using both of them at the same time. And you want to have enough of each. So the glutamate excites neurotransmitters. So that's part of how it's keeping you up and alive and present. It causes excitation. It stimulates the nerve cells that makes them able to receive information. It regulates neurogenesis, that's the production of more nerve cells, and it plays a role in learning and memory. The GABA is the inhibitory neurotransmitter. It blocks messages sent between the nerve cells and the brain or the spinal cord. So when you want everything to be quiet, you just settle down and let all the noise that's coming out of your brain, chop it off. That's the role of GABA. And that's good when you want to be quiet, and when you want to be awake, you certainly don't want that. So here's the schematic of the two as a function of time of day. So a little bit after 7 o'clock in the morning, the glutamate starts rising, reaches its peak about 2, and then by 7 p.m. this is optimally, of course, it's tapering down and you're getting ready to sleep. Meanwhile, the GABA at night, it's nice and high, keeping you comfortably cozy. And then when it's time to get up, it starts to fall off, to wane, and then builds back up again for the end of the day. And as I say, we'll talk more about this with the Sleepy Nights patch, because it also involves these two chemicals. But you need the acceleration to get up and get going, and that's the glutamate. And if you actually take GABA as a supplement, you can buy it, you go out and take a pill. if you take GABA as a supplement, it's sort of like hitting the brakes and the accelerator at the same time, and it makes you not feel so very good. So the supplements don't work too well. And also, there's a relationship with PTSD. With PTSD, it's where you've got too much glutamate here and it comes up, and when it's time to go to sleep, it's still high, and you don't have enough GABA, because it's a trade-off. You don't have enough GABA coming in to bring the glutamate down, and therefore you have trouble with sleep and being wired all the time. And one comment about the need for sleep is that you need it for regeneration and autophagy. Autophagy is what's in this picture here, where you have this cell going along and collecting all the cells that are dead and no longer functioning, and it's going to swallow them up and take them away. So very important process. Okay, so we've been talking about what the queen bee, what I've been able to find and assimilate about what the queen bee peptide will actually do, and how increasing it might, that the queen bee peptide has been shown to do these things. If you increase the queen bee peptide in your body, then you are going to have support and your body's ability to do these things will be enhanced. Lifewave actually, does their own studies, and particularly for some of these earlier patches, it's done more than for the more recent patches, because they had to proof of concept, etc. So now we'll talk about what the patches themselves have actually been shown to do. So actually quite a bit. So we have a list of amino acids here, and it includes the two we've just been talking about, the glutamate and the glutamine, which makes GABA. I mean, these three actually all kind of work together. But so we've talked about those three. So Dr. Melinda Connor, who does a lot of the lab science now for the Lifewave products, and her colleague, Eichhoff, randomized subjects, 10 subjects got the Aeon patch and 10 got the control, and they took a lot of measurements, and they looked one day ahead. So these, when they say they enhance the amino acids, it means they could measure a significant change over the course of 24 hours. And we'll talk about these other amino acids in just a minute. But here to summarize, in just sort of more general classes of what in this study they showed, that the amino acids that, I mean, one thing was really interesting, the neurotransmission. It shows that it affects amino acids that are involved in neurotransmission. What was interesting in looking at her paper is, there are a lot of amino acids. What is it, 36 or something? And, if things were just happening randomly, that maybe they got a spurious, it affects the glutamate, and then it affects something that has something now, nothing to do with neurotransmission. At any rate, they had this whole list of things they did, and all of the ones that were positive were neurotransmitters. I mean, it was just this collection of things, which really says that the Aeon patch, is involved with the nervous system. And it also, so that was a biggie in terms of looking at the data. It's also been shown to affect protein and collagen building, detoxification, and immune function. And we'll say more about these when we talk about these other amino acids now here. So on the left, we have L-DOPA, sometimes just called DOPA. The L, the little letter in front of these proteins just refers to how the molecule is twisted. it's twisted one way, it's an L, and another way it's an R, etc. Same molecule, but functions differently because it's going to lock onto things differently. So anyway, this is L-DOPA. It is a precursor. That is, it's something that gets turned into the neurotransmitters dopamine, noradrenaline, and epiprine. And then we'll talk about those three things again. Also, I believe it is with the silent night patch. So I won't talk about those specifically, but many of you probably heard of dopamine, and noradrenaline, or if you have a, like if you are allergic to bee stings or something, then you carry a syringe to keep yourself from overreacting to having an overreaction, an allergic overreaction. So the DOPA mediates the release of neurotropics, which promote survival of neurons in the brain and the central nervous system. Well, that sounds good. We want the nerves that are in our brain and in our central nervous system to stick around. It prevents neurons from initiating programmed cell death. So by programmed cell death, they mean, it's, quote, the cell decides it's lived its productive life and turns itself off and says, I'm quitting now. And that's opposed to cell death by trauma. You can beat a cell to death. But this, the cells in our body believe that's what is meant by, they used to think it was like really programmed and this was hard, but one's learning it could be unprogrammed, that the cells think they have just so long to live and then they have to go away. So it stops the nerves from committing suicide. It induces differentiation of the cells to form neurons. So we'd like to have stem cells create new neurons if we need it, and it induces that. And it's used to treat Parkinson's disease. So that so all of that's pretty good. This amino acid called serine is important for proper brain development. It's critical in the synthesis of proteins, neurotransmitters, nucleotides, and lipids. I wrote quite a bit here, but because I wanted to get a few words out. It's a major source. It's a major contributor to methylation reactions. And at some point, we'll probably talk more about those. But they are the reactions involving the control of gene expression, what proteins you're going to use, what you're actually going to do with your RNA. So they can actually change the activity of the DNA without doing anything to the sequence itself. They're connected to mental health. They boost immune function, promote regular sleep, fight chronic fatigue, and may offer neuroprotection. And when one says may, it means there's not the evidence is not considered conclusive. So the patches have been shown to increase serine. We have two more, cysteine, and there's a lot of amino acids that look pretty close to this. So anyway, this is one of them. The cysteine is a building block of glutathione. Glutathione is one of the YH patches. It's the master antioxidant in the body. And I have a talk on the glutathione, which you can go listen to on my YouTube channel, if you are interested. But the glutathione is made up of 3 amino acids, and cysteine is one of them. So it's important. Cysteine is used in the construction of proteins. And then these last items have to do with its ability to help with detoxification. So in particular, metal detoxification. If you have a protein that actually has a component, which is the cysteine amino acid, it's going to bind really tightly to metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, things you really don't want in your body. And so when it's floating around and it gets in contact with one of these things, it's going to pick it up and, get it out of your blood. And I mean, it may go sit in your fatty system for some time, but it's going to nullify the negative effects it's going to have on you. So it's good for metal detoxing. It's also good for alcohol detoxing. So hiding, this is a component that when you digest alcohol, it turns into this, and the cysteine turns this into acetic acid, which is just a mild, you have acetic acid in a lot of foods, added to a lot of foods that you eat in order to keep them fresh. It's something you can digest easily. So all that sounds good. And the last one here is proline, which is an essential component of collagen. And in particular, it's the main support for the skin, the tendons, the bone, and the connective tissue. So it's very important for the proper function of your joints. So that's a lot, but there's more, because that was just one study. You remember that didn't have anything to do with what was on the claims that were on the patch. The claims that are on the patch have to do with relaxation and stress. And so what is the case is that stress can be measured. And the way that the scientists working with the Lifewave patches have measured it is, we'll come to the method in the next slide, but the method has to do with the autonomic nervous system. So let's spend a minute on it. First, your heart rate is modulated by your autonomic nervous system, and your autonomic nervous system regulates your body's unconscious activities. Well, the heart rate is an example. The system actually has three components: the parasympathetic system, the sympathetic nervous system, and this enteric nervous system. We're not going to talk about the last one. It's not related to the patch. And actually, of the research that they've done, the findings, what's been significant is with the parasympathetic system. So let me just say for completeness, that the sympathetic nervous system is what's responsible for your fight or flight mechanism. So that's the rev up part of the anatomic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for rest and digest. You just ate a big meal, you want to take a nap, and the feed and breed activities that it helps you want to eat when you get hungry. It makes you want to breed. It makes you want to socialize with members of the opposite sex. And it helps. It acts with a body that's at rest and feeling good, rather than, you might think of breeding, you might think of a sex drive, but that's more the stimulated activity of the sympathetic nervous system. So now this slide is about the measurement. So all of this has to do with what we know about what the patch does with respect to rest and relaxation. So there's this term that's used, heart rate variability, and it's abbreviated HRV. And it provides an indirect, non-invasive marker of how the autonomic nervous system is doing. And it's actually measurements that come from electrocardiographic data. And it's a very complicated mathematical formula. You have your data and it goes over time, and your heart rate goes up and down and wiggles and everything. And so this quantity refers to the variation in the heart rate. And when I first started reading about this, I assumed that you don't want the heart rate to be too variable. You don't want it all over the place. You're looking for a nice rhythmic pattern. But this is actually the what this measures has exactly the opposite interpretation. It has to do with a ratio of the how high things are to how low things are, and so it's quantifying the changes in the cycle in the heart rate. But a high HRV is good because it means that your system's adaptable and can dynamically respond to change. And then if you have a low heart rate variability, it indicates that you're having a hard time keeping homeostasis in your system. And so it actually means that your behavior might be more erratic. So here on the left, we have a picture of heart rate variability values, and this is like the middle 50%. From age 20 to age 60, and you can see that over time, by the time you're 60, your variability is you're not very adaptable by the time you're 60, and I guess that's kind of a cliche, and we should know it, but we have to have a hard and fast measurement to confirm this for ourselves. And here's a little summary comment from the task force of the European Society of Cardiology in 1996, where they declared that heart rate variability is significantly greater in healthy, relaxed people than those who are emotionally stressed. Oh, and look, sorry for the typo at the top. Okay, so what do we know about the Aeon patch? Well, look at the right, because this is the little box that has to do with heart rate variability. We have a study in 2010, one in 2013, and one in 2015. And this first one was 20 subjects, and they looked just 15 minutes after putting the patch on, looking at the difference between before the patch and after the patch. And they saw increases in the parasympathetic activity. And the paper has all the details of what different things they looked at specifically with respect to the electrocardiograms, but this is the conclusion. In 2013, they had 10 subjects randomized to patches or control. So that's very few subjects. And they found no changes from day 1 to day 2. So that was a negative result. And then in 2015, because David really believed in this product, I guess, he put 50 subjects on a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, which is the gold standard. And they found that after 20 minutes, the patch versus the control, the difference was significant. And in the fact that the parasympathetic response was enhanced. So I think there's pretty good evidence that it promotes relaxation. Now on the left, does not have to do with the HRV. It has to do with thermal imaging, which they do pictures of individuals, and if you're cool, it's blue, and if you're hot, it's red. And Dr. Clark did a number of studies for different patches, and I was able to find pictures for other patches, but not for the Aeon patch. So I didn't give you a picture, but his conclusion was after 24 subjects for 5 days, there was a rebalance of the autonomic nervous system due to most of the participants responding with a thermal change. So this is temperature But that it went both ways. They either cooled or they warmed, depending on what was going to bring them back to normal. So this is consistent with this idea of regulating homeostasis and balance in your system. I think this is the last one. Here's the equipment. It looks like a magnetic resonance machine, but it's going to measure the conductivity of one's interstitial fluid. And one's looking at, if you've got a lot of resistance in your tissue, the voltage is going to drop. And if the voltage can go through smoothly, the voltage won't drop. And it's a special piece of equipment because the voltages we're looking at are very low, and most medical imaging devices and like the electrocardiograms and such, are looking at much higher voltages, and so they miss this information. So Blake, Greenberg, and Nazarin patched some subjects and looked before and after. So they looked at, they did one group of subjects at 3 days, they did patch them for 3 days a week for 2 weeks. And the other group, they did 5 days a week for two weeks. And there's a list of the organs that were found to be significant. If they only did 3 days per week, the significance was restricted to the left and right adrenal glands and the hypothalamus, which are already big deals. But if they did 5 days a week, they got the whole batch of organs to respond. And if they'd done it for more than 2 weeks, then this other group probably would have significant responses as well. There was a small control study earlier that did not find changes with a couple of different pieces of equipment. And then there is a study here in 2011 where they did find changes again this is another study with this same electro-interstitial scan machine, where they also found changes in the in a number of the organs, and it was a much smaller, well, they only had 5 controls. So anyway, evidence is pointing to some positive happenings with the Aeon patch. I guess we're not finished. This is the earlier patches, they were trying all the pieces of equipment they had on every patch. And then more recently, they haven't felt the need to do that. But this is called the gas discharge visualization. And here's a picture of the piece of equipment up here. You put your hand or a leaf or some other object on the glass, and it's got a film and an insulator. And then you've got a voltage supply. And you measure the gas that's being discharged from the object, which in terms of a leaf, here's the leaf. The most of the gas that's being discharged is carbon dioxide, which is being measured. Now over here, you have an image of having somebody putting they put their whole hand on it. They measure all 10 fingers, but I just put 2 on here for you to see that, you got the right hand and the left hand, and it's measuring the discharge of the gas from the fingers. And on the one here, it's pretty nice and symmetric. And from the other, you can see that that it's very, very biased in terms of, and very incomplete. And you've got this whole area where there's nothing coming out at all. And then they use acupuncture meridians to trace back to the body what it is that where the interference is and what's been affected. And so again, we had 2 different studies here, and measurements were taken and the conclusions. So now they're looking at this light pattern. So what do you measure? They measured total density was found to change, the density of the light. the brightness of the spectrum of the light, the spectrum of the brightness was found to change, and the width of the aura, I guess you could call it. It's not the same aura as with the chakras, but it is what it is. And the width was found to change. And then Streeter found increases in the area. So all of this together is evidence that the detoxification process has been engaged within 24 hours. So supporting the fact that the Aeon Patch plays these roles in detoxification. And Streeter, the one here, also found differences in the brain, the central nervous system, and the adrenal function. So all in all, there's a lot of evidence that there's a lot going on. And then I just finish it here. There were some self-reported studies, where some psychology studies where they took some standard version from the I told you at the beginning that two of the original scientists working on the patches were Thomas and Helen Budygensky. I may not saying it right, but he was a biophysicist and she was a PhD psychologist, and she did a lot of the psychology work, most of which didn't have much to show. But in the case of the Aeon Patch, in terms of using these standardized testing, the mental focus improved, energy level improved in most of the patients, and pain levels decreased. So that was interesting. I have a patch of references. They can all be found in the Lifewave, on the Lifewave website. This video will be posted on YouTube. You can come back and look at it. I have some references on the royal jellies, which again, you can come back and look at if you wish. And here is sort of the finale, which is the rainbow of Lifewave's patches, which are designed to do different things, and they're all very important and useful. So Lifewave does not cure any diseases. If you have an illness, you need to go talk to your doctor. Lifewave is working on a very basic level to help your body heal itself and provide you with wellness. So with that disclosure, I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again for my next talk. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and shall I stop the recording, or do you want to say something, Virginia?
You can stop the recording.
Okay.
It was a good talk.